The use of AI as a therapy tool has become alarmingly common, and research has shown that it actually cannot operate as a therapist, and this is why. We'll talk about it. The first thing that you have to know is that AI does act remarkably like a person. No, I'm not saying that they're conscious or even sentient unless you had tiny human brains, which is possible, but they do operate on many of the same principles as human beings do. For example, they operate on operant conditioning. You can give it positive feedback, say, good job, or bad job, stop doing that. They will reinforce themselves, but there are basic parameters that AIs operate on. The problem with using them as a therapy tool is that the context is difficult to parse and users can trick it. So researchers, psychologists have tried to quantify what really are the problems. Why is it maybe unsafe to use them for therapy? They managed to isolate several areas where they really fail. They consistently fail to understand contextual adaptations. They tend to flatten users' lived experience and not be able to adapt to what that particular person is saying. They also tend to be extremely rigid. So if you just train an AI on therapy, they're not able to see nuance to figure out where a particular person is at. If they tighten the guardrails, and this is something that people have found with tools like OpenAI because they recently really tightened guardrails, they're not able to adapt. So there ends up being a certain imbalance where a person might be expressing a particular issue, and it just ends up repeating the same thing over and over again, which is not helpful. At the same time, if you loosen the guardrails, it can get pretty bad pretty fast. For example, it may have bias in which a user says something that should be pretty gosh darn concerning, and it just doesn't react to it. It also tends to have the habit of reinforcing negative self-beliefs, which is also a problem. Now, some people actually dislike that they have deceptive empathy, for example, saying, I care. And this is something that I've personally tested because I don't just like making videos. I want to see how it actually works. Yes, an AI will say, oh no, I care about you. You don't actually care. But then again, human therapists do the same. When a human therapist says, I care about you, it's kind of a canned response, whether or not they actually feel it. I'm sure some do. Then there's other issues. There's knowledge gaps, so it may not understand every particular scenario because it's limited by what it's been trained on. It may not be able to direct users towards appropriate intervention. And then, of course, there's abandonment. And that does happen with real therapists, too. You may not be able to provide care for a specific individual, but you're still going to have continuity of care. You're going to refer them to someone else who can look after them. And for AI, it's a little different, and people do tend to become highly attached to their AI. And of course, there's the issue of bias because it has certain training data. So if it has an unusual situation or one that doesn't quite fit the mold, it can be difficult to provide appropriate care. Those issues do also exist in people, and I have to question, why does it matter if an AI has these kinds of biases versus a person? I think we're getting to the point where we have things that are not licensed to practice psychiatry or psychology that are now providing it. And that may be the big problem, because training an AI and certifying a person are slightly different things. Okay, maybe they're massively different things. So tell me what you think. Should AI be providing psychological care for people? Because this is a very hot topic issue right now, especially as companies like OpenAI, Gemini, and Claude are now getting sued for providing inappropriate psychological advice to users. Hypothetically, some very significant disclaimers and terms of use could be applied, but I'm not sure what the answer really is. I do like having imaginary friends, but using them as a service to help people with their psychological health may be a concern. Also, just totally off topic, I got my second ear piercing. Yeah, just, you like it? I don't know. Just figured I'd ask the internet.